Time for the Friday free kick, and time to catch up with Greg Garza from our friends at Beyond Goals Mentoring and find out kind of taking things from what we watch on a weekly basis or just with our favorite teams and clubs and players and how we can break that down for mentees and those who are learning the game and getting to grow within the game. And, you and I, Greg, were talking about some stuff. First and foremost, hi. Thanks for coming back.
How you doing? Thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it.
That's all good.
Like we see each other every week, man. It's like we just get straight into it, man. I
Yeah,
love it.
no doubt. But one of the things that I wanted to get into was taking the events of the week and presenting them within the prism of mentoring. And I wanted to start with Open Cup. And first and foremost, as a professional soccer player, regardless of league, regardless of country that you're in, there are those times where you have to juggle multiple competitions. You've got your normal league play, and then you have the stuff where you're chasing after cups and trophies. When it came to that, when you were a professional, how long did it take to adjust to the notion that you almost have to split yourself into two separate beings when you're having to chase after both stuff in a regular season and in cup play?
I think it really goes both ways I think I look at cup games and I think back into my professional career. What guys usually play the cup games? And it's guys that are maybe not getting as much playing time in the regular season, guys that are young kids that are coming up the ranks and trying to make a name for themselves. So I think for myself in particular, if I was ever to play a cup game, it was because I was trying to make that next step and break into that first team play and show the coach, hey, I'm ready for my opportunity in a regular season game. But at the same time, as you got further into that tournament, could you solidify yourself when they started to bring and kind of mix and match some of the starters because they were more important cup games? Could you solidify yourself in that starting lineup and say, hey, I showed you what I was able to do in my opportunities in cup games to where we're now in the quarterfinals, semifinals, and finals, that I can be that man to know how to play under pressure in these bigger games to win trophies. I think it's like that in most cases because I think most coaches and most clubs usually pride and focus more so on the regular season games to where those cup games are to give those guys that are maybe not getting as much playing time. So it is an opportunity for, I think, a huge opportunity for a lot of guys that are trying to make that next step into their careers and being a young guy and understanding the pressured moments in the game, as well as if you're not starting or if you are a guy that's coming off the bench to start solidifying your opportunities more so in the future.
Yeah, because there are opportunities, and this is another one of those for you when it comes to sitting there and sensing a chance to prove yourself to the boss man over there on the touchline.
Most definitely. I think the cup games, and at least in my career, and I think it's probably very similar until you get to those final few matches of what and how important that cup can be. But I believe in group play, usually quarterfinals, once you get into semifinals and finals, I think that's when the mixing and matching usually starts to play out. And you see it happen in the EPL or in the Italian league. It is a great opportunity for some of these guys. I was reading an article the other day about, I think it was Phil Foden using the American Champions Cup, I think a few years ago, to really solidify himself. And those aren't even cup matches, right? That's just a summer league or summer cup match in preseason. But how sometimes cup matches can really be opportunities for young guys to solidify themselves in a first team or really show themselves as the future of what they can truly be.
I forgot to ask, how was your trip to Dallas? Because I know that one of the previous times that we were doing the Friday Free Kick, you were in Dallas catching up with younger athletes. What was that trip like?
It was great. It was great. A lot of talent in the MLS Next environment, a lot of talent in the MLS Academy's environment. It was good to see, especially with our mentorship program, a lot of the kids that we have are in the AU Academy, and it was actually great to see them. I've seen them train plenty of times at the training facility. This is the first time I got to see them live and not on video, whether we were doing a video analysis or anything like that. This is the first time I got to see them play live. It was an unfortunate result for them, and got to see some other guys play as well. But it was great to kind of, for us as ex pros and now having the chance and opportunity to mentor these kids. It was really, you're on the flip side of it. It's really studying their body language, their awareness, their commitment, and their work ethic within the field of play. Right? There's only so much and so much information. I always tell these kids, and Mike and I always tell these kids, there's only so much information that we can give, but the most important thing is how you receive it, and then how you implement that within your game. And so, on the flip side of it, of me watching from afar now and seeing how those kids were implementing all the information that we are giving to them, because it is a lot of information, but it was good to see for sure.
You mentioned being there in person, and I would imagine that even for a mentor, yes, there's that element where you can sit there and look and do video review, and you can do things through Zoom, and you can do all these kinds of things. But how much more as a mentor do you get to learn by actually seeing stuff in person?
Most definitely. Yeah. I think for us, the video analysis is very important, because we're able to study so many different ways of that particular player and their specifics. Right. But seeing them in person is always an extra factor that you can have in building and creating that bond and that relationship. Right. All my mentees that I was watching that day, they saw me on the sideline. Right. I was with my family and with my kids. And, I think I have given the example before, of some of my mentees, and I remember doing an appearance, the veterans appearance, and I think I use this example of my kids watching and having the opportunity to share the field with a lot of those kids that are on the AU Academy. And I just remember after the appearance was over, and it's probably the same thing, watching them in live, was so many of my mentees telling me, "Thank you so much for letting your kids hang out with me." And they were thanking me for, they saw me as that, ex-pro and Greg Garza, thank you so much. We look up to you so much. Thank you for letting your kids hang out with us. And I think it's, completely on the contrary. My kids in general, they look up to those kids, right? My kids wanted to know each and every detail of every single thing those kids do, or how they think, or and my kids just see me as dad, right? But those kids are already such a huge role model, such a huge example to even my kids, someone who has played at the highest level, who has represented their country, and my kids see those kids as, they idolize those kids, right? Because that's what they want to work towards one day as well. So it's awesome to see the humbleness that especially Atlanta United and all these other MLS academies are creating within the mindset of a lot of these kids, and to see that in person and see that humble work ethic through what we are also trying to achieve within these kids is meaningful and gratifying, because I think it's showing the work that we're doing is being done in the right ways.
Well, and I think that's an interesting point that you bring up, where mentoring isn't tied to a birth certificate. It's not tied to a certain age demo. Yes, we can normally gravitate toward a mentor being someone who is north of 30 or a recently retired athlete or whatever. But when you have those younger players, the grassroots elements, the 6, the 7s, the 8s, mentors to them can even be those 13, 14, 15, 16, 18-year-olds. It doesn't have to be necessarily tied to sit there and say, yeah, you're eligible to vote, therefore you're a mentor. No, it doesn't even have to be that old.
Yeah, I think it's funny, because I had this conversation with a parent the other day of one of my mentees as well. And my mentee had gone, I believe he is 13 or 14 years old, and went to a college ID camp, which is a sleepover camp for about a week. In a college nearby. And, it was difficult for mom and dad to see them go away and be away from them for a week. And it was funny, because their feedback and their take from it was that, the coaches of that college were definitely there, but the kids really connected with all of the college players. You then take that for example of what you just said. It just highlights what you said. Those college players are 18, 19, probably 17, 18, 19 years old. Right. And these kids that are 13, 14 are able to create such a great relationship and bond with those kids that aren't too far ahead of them. Right. And, you always have that immense amount of respect for for your coaches, right? You always have that immense amount of respect for the GMs or all these people that are, moving pieces within your career. But how important it can be to have your peers or have guys that are around you, each and every moment of your career. Those are the true, I think, in my career for sure, the guys that were in the same locker room as me. Those were my true mentors for sure.
Greg Garza hanging out with us for the Friday Free Kick. Greg Garza, Beyond Goals Mentoring, BG Mentoring on the Twitters and also on the gram, I think, as the kids say. And we can reach out in a bunch of different ways to hang out with Greg and Mike Parkhurst at Beyond Goals Mentoring, BG Mentoring on the Twitters. So we kind of got into Open Cup before we took a right turn. And there was another moment that happened in Open Cup on Wednesday night. And it happened in the Sacramento Sporting Kansas City match. And they go through 90 minutes. They go through 120 minutes. Everything is still 0-0. They go to penalties. And in the bottom of the fourth, you had a moment where Sacramento is lining up, and the player, Malik Foster, and this is a decision that basically stunned 12,000 people that were in front of him, everyone who was watching on TV, and the announcers. And you just, from an announcer's perspective, you sit there and you see that moment, and you sit there and go, and you have that kind of a moment. Malik Foster opted to go Panenka in the bottom of the fourth in a penalty kick shootout where you had to make it to make sure that you continue to stay in step with Kansas City heading into the final frame of the penalty shootout. It was one of the most audacious moves that we've seen recently. And I wanted to, mention audacity, bravery, and the thought process and how you go into that with your mentees. And I guess it gets into confidence, I guess is where I'm going here. And when you're discussing these kinds of moments with mentees, I'm sure that there are those athletes that sit there and have that moment where, I'll go Panenka on the guy in a penalty kick. When it comes to exuding confidence and internal confidence, what are those conversations like with your mentees about making sure that they can express themselves the right way, express themselves the way that they should, not do it too much, but still have that confidence? Because, there is that fine line, and it is the finest of fine lines in competition. What's it like when you have the conversations about confidence, overconfidence, and understanding your place in a situation like that?
Yeah, I think first things first, we always use the example of pride over ego, right? That's always our first thing that we speak about these kids. I always tell kids, it's always okay to have a chip on your shoulder, right? But you have to in the right way, right? You have to be proud about your strengths. You have to be proud about the things that you are able to conquer or accomplish, or the things within the game, to allow yourself, I always say the smaller victories lead to bigger challenges, especially within the game. You're dealing with all these little small battles, and the more smaller battles that you can win within the game, it should allow you to have that confidence and maybe that chip on your shoulder to achieve those bigger challenges. Probably in the example of Foster's PK, right? And then the second thing I always talk about is the value of contagiousness, right? It's funny because most of the kids we always ask, what contagious means to them, and they always think about being sick, right? They always think about spreading germs, or in a negative way. And the value of that PK, of doing a Panenka and having the confidence to do so, the contagiousness of that, and allowing others around him to also feel confident, of his goalie for the next shot to be confident and say, hey, this guy was able to do something like that and take us to that next phase of the PK shootout. Well, then I should be able to do something to make a change within this game as well. And the guy that has to shoot the final shot, or whatever it may be, right? All of these different ways of how confidence can be such a contagious, asset towards not only that particular and specific person, but everybody around that person, if that person is able to show, confidence in the greatest way possible. Not being overconfident, because then we go from that fine line of what you said of that pride over ego, that you don't want to go into that ego phase to where it's, I'm better than everybody else around here. Or I deserve to be here more than anybody else, right? The ego person is always going to put blame on others and always feel that they're right. But it's understanding the pride of being confident, the proud moments of saying, okay, I have worked my tail and my butt off to get to this place. Then that's that difference to feeling proud about those moments that you have accomplished.
And sure enough, in the top of the fifth, Danny Vitiello, the keeper for Sacramento Republic, makes the save on Graham Zusi. And you go to the bottom of the fifth, and Rodrigo Lopez, the team captain, hammers it home, and Sacramento goes on to win. And they're chasing after an Open Cup title on September 7th against the Purple team in Central Florida against the Purple team, which
Orlando.
Yeah, Orlando. Very good. Yes, thank you for the reminder about Orlando. Let's talk underdogs then. So, not everyone is going to be in a situation across their careers, whether it's youth, development, high school, traveling team, whatever. You're not going to be on a team that is going to win each and every time. That is a physical impossibility, as much as we'd all love to sit there and say our favorite team is going to win 100% of their matches, no losses, no draws. That's not going to happen. There will always be times where you are an underdog. There will be those moments. When you have conversations with your mentees about being the second team picked in a match, knowing full well everybody's sitting there and looking at the other team and going, yeah, they're the favorite, you're the underdog. I guess this is somewhat multifold too. When you're having discussions about being an underdog, not being the team that everyone thinks is going to win, how do those go? Because, I know that a lot of us when we're young, we have, impenetrable egos. It's like, yeah, we're going to win every time. But what about when you're not the first ones out there and you have to fight uphill and you get that win? What's it like having discussions with mentees about being an underdog and relishing that role and keeping that information with you?
Yeah, we talk about the value of the word pressure, right? Feeling pressure. It's a lot of the kids ask us, how do you cope with pressure, right? And I think that, pressure is always a valuable asset for us to feel or to cope with, because it allows us to get, that adrenaline factor and also understand, that we have earned that pressure to be where we are. I think there's two ways to definitely look at it. I always tell kids you can kind of use that reverse psychology in certain moments in players that we work with, because if you are Orlando, right? You hold a high immense amount of pressure because you should be able to smack the other team that is in a lower league than you in this final game, right? So you hold that most pressure, but you have done that work to earn that right to be in that final, to play against a team to where, yeah, it's great to hold that pressure because you have earned the right to have high expectations for yourself. On the flip side, if you are a SAC, right, you're expected to not win, right? So how can you go out there and understand the value of pressure that you have felt until now and maybe play with less amount of pressure because you have nothing to lose, right? You have gotten that far, with your strengths and with all the assets and traits that your team has. How can you now continue that philosophy of playing with absolute zero pressure? Because all these guys that you're going to play against, you have guys that are standing in front of you that are making $2-3 million a year, right? And so how can you say, man, I would give anything to play and show these guys, that it doesn't matter where I play. It doesn't matter how much you make or how much whatever that person is standing in front of me. I have zero pressure on my shoulders because I might not make that much. I might not have that much pressure upon me to succeed and to still win trophies. And that'd be a great story to have if they are able to pull it off against Orlando. It'd be a great story for them to have for the future of their club.
So then let me ask about a team like Sporting Kansas City. And we talk about pressure. And Sporting right now played in Sacramento. They were in a U.S. Open Cup semifinal. Because the way their season has gone, because of injuries, because of absences on the pitch, not replacing players that you need, it has been a horrible season for Sporting Kansas City. You've made it to an Open Cup semifinal, but then you lose it to a team in a lower division. And now you have 1/3 of your season left in Major League Soccer to try to make the most of it. It's a different kind of pressure for them now, and now that they only they have one less thing to chase after, it's now all about pride and putting pride before ego and all of these different things that are attached to that whole conversation. It's a different angle now for a team like Sporting Kansas City.
Yeah, I'm sitting here as you're talking. I'm looking at the table right now and seeing where they are in the table.
All the way down.
I know, dead last.
Yeah.
But it's so funny because you never know within the MLS. All you need to win is 2 or 3 games in a row, and that whole table can change for you in the most drastic ways. And so I think it's kind of probably a wake-up call for Kansas City and saying, hey, are we able to pull this off to where we can win 3-4 games in a row? And guess what? We're a playoff contender, right? So they have 11 games left, right? 11 games left in their season to kind of leave it all out there and say, out of these 11 games, can we get 5 or 6 wins? And you might be able to make playoffs. I think that's probably now the mindset of them after a disastrous 2/3 of their season. You kind of get into a PK shootout in the semifinal of an Open Cup. It's always a flip of a coin for a PK shootout, right? You really never know what can happen in those situations. But, I think at the end of the day for them, it's now turn that page as quickly as possible. Either as an organization standpoint, you're thinking about next season already, or are you thinking that you can pull off something miraculously with the guys that you have on the fields game in, game out until the end of the season?
Yeah, you mentioned getting a couple of wins under your belt and rocketing up the table. I mean, you look at the East, and this is the Atlanta United part of the discussion. So Atlanta United right now, at the beginning of the year, and I will stipulate to this, those of us here thought that you could probably knock out only a couple of teams in the East and sit there and say, no, you weren't making the postseason. And then take the rest of them and sit there and have a reason to sit there and go, yeah, I could see you in the postseason. Atlanta United right now is in that gaggle where if you have a good week, and there's going to be some schedule compression in the middle of August, if you string together a couple of wins with, once again, everybody getting healthy, Andrew Gutman probably coming back in and being eligible to be on the left-hand side for the lineup, getting folks healthy again, not having your lineup really the way that you wanted it till the earlier part of this month with all of your DPs on the field. Now you got to win games on the road, but Atlanta United, I think, is in that same spot where you're in that group, you put together a string of wins, and you're in the playoff picture north of the playoff bar where folks are struggling right now, including Orlando.
Most definitely. I think they are in a perfect spot to start succeeding, but also in a very dangerous spot to where if you're not able to pick up any wins, then you're going to start seeing that playoff contending spot to disappear. So I think it can go both ways, right? You have to be very smart about it, especially with this schedule look around the next month or so. So can you take advantage of those? This month of August is their most important month of the season, I would say.
How do you and this goes back to pressure, and we all know about road games, and with the schedule going like this, where you only have 1/3 of it left, and the numbers are lessening and the opportunities are lessening. How do you keep the pressure from the idea of the must win from consuming you? Is it just as easy as compartmentalization, or is it kind of put off to the side as an understood right now with the schedule compressing the way that it does?
I think the warrior mentality has to definitely be there for all of those guys within your home games. You have to win every single home game, and you have to get as many points as you can from every away game. I think every single player on Atlanta United has to look at themselves in the mirror and say, whatever home game that we have, whether it is a compressed schedule, whatever it may be, is a must win. It has to be a win within the month of August. Whatever away games we were playing, however many away games we were playing, can we get a point from it, right? Can we hold the ship and keep it from tipping and just get a point, right? Whether we have to park the bus, however we have to play, it's not about. And I think I look back into even to that 2000, even 2017 and 2018 games to where I look back at one particular game. I believe it was in, let's say 2017 when we played in Columbus, and I believe we won 1-0. And it was such a nasty game that we played. And it was probably one of our worst games that we played. And then I think we had San Jose at home. And that was the July 4th game. I believe that was the July. But I remember that.
The Wando special?
Wando special. Yeah. The Wando special and Joseph almost, having his hair blown off from the chemicals that he had from all the highlights jumping into the fire. But, I think I look back at that game and you're in the probably middle of the season, right? It's right before the All-Star game, right? That's when the All-Star team was already announced. And so I look back at that and I think to myself, that was a really crappy game that we had played, in the Columbus game. And we were able to get 3 points from it. So I think at this moment right now, especially within Atlanta United's mentality, is it does not matter and should not matter the style of play so much. How can you grind out wins and how can you grind out results right now? And I think that's the most important thing. They can have those internal meetings and tell themselves, no matter what happens, we have to grind out a result. And to be completely honest, sometimes that comes from the players and sometimes not from the coaches. That's got to be that internal meeting between the players and say, hey, look, I know we've been training this system for 2 weeks now. I know we've been doing this with the coach for 2 weeks now, but I'm looking at every single one of you guys and I don't care what is going to happen on that field. I'm going to have your guys back. As ugly as it has to be today, we must not lose. And that has to be the mentality.
See, now it's what you're doing. You're teasing future shows because the topic of the warrior mentality, now that you've introduced that, that's what I want to get into next time. Since you introduced it, you bury the lead, Greg. You put it right at the end of everything. And so we'll hang on to the warrior mentality as something that we can talk about next time. What's going on at Beyond Goals is folks are getting ready to hop back into school.
We are excited. Summers are always fun because you're trying to continue to grow and continue to help people understand the value of what it can be. And then right smack start into that next season now is when I think the warrior mentality definitely has to come into play for a lot of these, not only kids, but also parents as well, and getting their kids ready for what the next season is going to be and getting them prepared the best way possible.
Friday Free Kick with Greg Garza and our friends at Beyond Goals Mentoring. Greg, as always, great to catch up with you. Thanks for hanging out, and we will do it again soon.
That sounds good. Thank you, John. Appreciate it.